When deciding on a Medicare plan, don't be just another number. Expect to be known and valued at Jessup Insurance and Retirement Services. Think about this. When you respond to a national Medicare mailer or an 800 number, or even give your life's history to an out-of-state telemarketer, the reality is this. You will never speak to the same person twice, and they don't have your best interest at heart. At Jessup Insurance, you will never be just another number. Call Jessup Insurance at 435-213-3200 for personal Medicare help today.
Jessup Insurance and Retirement Services, let us guide you.
Hey, this is Gary Sullivan from At Home with Gary Sullivan. The seasons are changing, the temperature's getting cooler, and I can help you with projects around your home. I'll give you tips on energy and water conservation. I'll save you some money and make you more comfortable. If your next project is painting, well, I'll give you tips on how to prepare the surface, the type of paint to use, and tips to make that project go easier. We'll take your calls, so join me on At Home with Gary Sullivan this weekend.
Saturday nights at 7 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM. It's time for the Garden Guide with your host, Mark Anderson from Anderson Seed and Garden.
New research suggests that people are more likely to eat vegetables if they have a tempting name.
What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes.
From gardening to landscaping.
Today we are going to try and create garden eyebrows. Kind of like the flowers are sprouting directly from your hair. That makes sense.
Go! Phone lines are open at 753-KVNU or 800-369-KVNU.
Kind of like eating vegetables.
It's the Garden Guide, now on KVNU 610 AM and 102 FM.
And we welcome you to the show on a very blustery, can we say blustery?
I believe blustery would be correct.
I think we've reached that blustery level. The wind picking up as this cold front came in last night, and it just has not stopped howling overnight.
You know, I went outside and I hopped in my truck and started pulling out of the driveway, and it's like, oh, there's a branch on the ground. Yeah. And it's like, I thought we took care of all of those last October when we had the big snowstorm, and you know, all the spare branches got broken off, but you know, there's another one there, so maybe we ought to talk about pruning today, but we definitely need to talk about winterizing plants because it's going to get chilly.
Very, very cold.
It looks like it's going to get
weekend.
cold really quick, and this is what we've been talking about on the show for the last couple of weeks. It's like, you know, we're into October, we haven't had a frost yet. That first frost is going to get cold.
It's coming.
And it's coming. Yeah, it's coming. So good time to winterize your sprinklers. I know I drained mine last night. So
I received a press release from the Utah Division of Water, and they were saying all of the state, except for Washington County. They said Washington County may have still a week or two that you could do some irrigating, but everyone else in the state, there's no reason to be running those sprinklers anymore.
Yeah, we did one more heavy watering. So we did like a heavy watering to make sure and get the soil moisture built up, which is really important. So when the ground freezes, which is probably going to happen in November sometime, we want good soil moisture, because if the soil's really dry and then we have a dry winter and the soil's frozen, all that snow just kind of sits on the top and it doesn't go down into the soil. And so we want some good soil moisture to start the fall off with, and a couple storms that are lined up will be perfect for that. But we'll always do a good heavy watering right when we kind of winterize the sprinklers and just get some good soil moisture there, because if the soil's wet and then we start getting some rainstorms and some snow that melts off, that will penetrate deeper into the soil, and then the trees and the shrubs and, you know, all the plants will be able to utilize that moisture through the wintertime. Yeah, even after the soil freezes. So good time to do a good heavy watering. I mean, we got storm coming though, so I watered Thursday, and then sprinklers got shut off and drained my pumps and everything. So so we'll be ready to go. I think our fall solstice has
it's definitely right. You know, and if you got a chance to do one thing today before the storm comes in, if you haven't fertilized, boy, today would be a great day to just try to throw some fertilizer out.
Get it on before the storm hits.
Yeah.
It's a little early for the winterizer. I like to go between Halloween and Thanksgiving, so I try and push mine as late as possible. But, you know, a lot of people are doing that. It's winterizing roses, getting that rose winterization done. But there's not a lot of leaves that have come off the trees yet. So it's like we need this cold weather to get the leaves off the trees so we can gather the leaves up and then use them to mulch plants and to put in the garden so I can till the garden. So got my garden all put to bed and ready to go this week too. So
we finished off picking our yellow delicious apples that just hadn't really started to sweeten up yet until this week with the colder weather. We just up until this last week, we just hadn't had some cold nights. And so
I had quite a few calls yesterday about, should I pick my apples? Should I leave them on? Should I pick my apples? And it's like, it's going to be low 20s. Pick your apples, So now's the time where they have had plenty of time to mature. Weather's been great. Even if we're not going to get a light frost on the apples, you got to pick them because hard frost is going to damage those.
Kill 'em.
Yeah, winter squash, they should be harvested and in the barn. And I might even go and cover mine and protect them next week, like Tuesday. If we get into low 20s, that could be cold enough to damage the squash, even in a protected location. So I think we'll cover those with an insulated blanket and protect them a little bit before we get them down the basement. But it's time to get those apples picked. Yeah, for sure.
A lot to be talking about today. We've got a guest we will introduce as well, and we can take phone calls, 753-5868 or 1-800-369-5868 if you have a question for Mark and his guest here on The Garden Guide.
So we'd like to welcome Jack Draxler here. Jack, so great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And some people might be going, "What's Mark talking to Jack about?" I know you're an avid gardener, so
we are avid gardeners, especially my wife.
Yeah. How did your garden grow this year?
We had a great garden. We had an awesome
garden. Was amazing this year.
And I picked apples Thursday.
Awesome
as well, and. We're just excited about this upcoming election when people will have the chance to vote on the open space bond issue.
Yes, and that's why I've got you on the show as well too. And you may be thinking, well, why is Mark talking about open space and how does this relate? It relates directly to our business and our industry and what's happening in our industry and how property values and development has really hit the garden business very, very directly, where garden centers that have been around for 50, 60, 70 years are disappearing. You've got fruit growers that are disappearing, especially over in Brigham City and Tremonton area where they've been doing that for years. And all of a sudden there's houses where all these orchards used to be. And right here in Cache Valley, we've got Zollinger's Tree Farm, and they've actually taken this step previously before this proposition.
And that's a prime example. That is an island of green up in River Heights that is surrounded by development, and the people in that neighborhood love it because it's an island of green in the middle of their
right.
And I want to stress this bond is not anti-development. We know that we need growth. We know that we need housing. And we believe we can have growth and preserve open space if we do it right.
Right. So
what this bond is proposing is that we take out a bond for $20 million. And some people say, well, and that's to be paid back over 20 years.
Right.
And some people say, well, that won't go very far at today's land prices. But we know that we can at least double or triple that. Some people tell us many more times than that. With private organizations, federal agencies, and state agencies that can really help us make a difference, because we feel that now is the time, because if we look south of us and we look at Weber County, Davis County, Salt Lake County, Utah County, we see the results of waiting too long.
Yeah, because a lot of those spaces are gone.
They are gone, like you said about the garden centers.
Yeah, they're just gone. And we have multiple friends in our industry that they had 8 or 10 acres. One was a a grower, and so they had greenhouses. They had 10 acres of greenhouses down in the Layton area, and the property was so valuable that they couldn't transition to the next generation, so they just closed up the facility and just sold it all off for housing, and that growing facility is gone. And I know in Cache Valley we have a tree farm, we have multiple tree farms, we've got some different growers, and I don't want to see them all disappear. I mean, they're our friends, they're our partners. I mean, that's who provides us with a lot of our product and a lot of our plants that we sell to our customers. And if they all disappear, where do we get our plants from?
Sure.
So.
And what we want to do is to make sure people understand this bond issue, so that when they vote, it's an informed vote.
Right.
And you mentioned the Zollinger Tree Farm. That's such a prime example, because this was a family who wanted to maintain stewardship of their land.
Yeah.
And they were willing to place a conservation easement on it and sell the development rights. And Ron Zollinger had a letter to the editor in the paper Thursday where he pointed out that the family netted only half of what they could have sold the land for development.
Right.
And so this is all for willing people, willing landowners who want to maintain that stewardship. They felt as a family that it was worth it to them to keep it in production of fruit and trees, and maintain stewardship of the land, even though they did not benefit financially as much as if they had sold it. Right.
And I remember as a kid going over to Zollinger's to get cider, and it's a fixture that's been there for a long time. And as I mean, think about it, when you drive home, like say you've gone somewhere else. Like a couple weeks ago, we had to go to California and to Reno for trade shows, and as we were driving back into the valley, you get through Sardine Canyon, and the valley just kind of opens up, and you just kind of go, I'm home.
Exactly.
But it's not completely populated. The valley is. I mean, it's sparsely populated.
Right.
And it would be really nice to preserve a lot of those open areas, so that as we drive into the valley, we don't go, more city.
Yeah. There's another misconception in that people feel that somehow a few landowners are going to get rich from this.
On this one.
And that is absolutely not correct. If we look at other bonds that have taken place in our state and around the West, they've been wonderful in that they've found the gems of open space. Obviously, you can't buy up all what's green right now.
Right.
And
it would be nice. It would be nice if we could,
but that's and
but it's not very realistic.
That. Yeah, it isn't. And so we want to identify the gems that could be preserved, and keep the character of Cache Valley beautiful.
Yeah. And I like the structure that they've come up with, because it kind of mirrors what they've done with the RAP tax in Cache County, and the RAP tax has been great for a lot of different community, I guess, groups or projects that have been going on, and the way the committee's set up, it's an extension of the Cache County Council, and they get to recommend to the council, what to do with it, and right. I think they've done an amazing job making sure that money gets spread to a lot of different groups and in a lot of different areas of the valley as well too.
Yeah, and the open space bond identifies that same process with this bond. When it passes, then the council will appoint a board, just like the RAPS tax, the Recreation, Arts, Parks, and Zoo tax, which is a sales tax, by the way.
Right.
It's different than ours, which would be a very minimal, in my view, property tax.
Yeah.
But there would be a board appointed by the elected officials who would then evaluate different projects, recommend back to the council those that seem to have real merit,
right? And
then the council, because it's public money, they decide how it's spent.
Right.
And we can identify some nearby things that would be ideal for us. One is that neat little trail in Garden City up by Bear Lake.
Right.
that runs along the west side of the highway from about the marina down to Pickleville.
Yeah.
People absolutely love that thing.
Right.
And it gets well used, and it's been an asset to the community.
Yeah.
And it hasn't stopped development, far from it, because growth and development has boomed up in the Bear Lake area. And yet, that's one example of a public good that can be had through
that
this
comes
kind
from
of
that.
an
And
effort.
I know Logan City has used their RAP funds that they've been able to receive on some really great trails and some really great improvements that are used daily by people. I mean, and constantly. And so it's been very, very beneficial for Logan City residents, but that's only a small portion of the tax that's collected. It's like we have to apply for specific projects, and then it goes through the board, and then they get approved, and they say, hey, this is a great project, and this would be really nice to have a blue trail in Logan that extends out into the county, and we could apply for, every city could apply for specific projects.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are waterways, there is wildlife habitat, there is trails and trail connectivity. There are the vistas that we see as we come into the valley that you mentioned.
Like I mentioned, yeah.
Not only from the south, but from the west and from the north and from the east.
Yeah.
And gosh, it's so beautiful. We've got to try to preserve some of the character that we have in this valley, and I think we can.
Yeah. We've got about 10 minutes left in the show. We've got a caller. You're welcome to call in with questions or comments. We're going to be talking about bulbs. We're going to be talking about rose winterization, lawn winterization. Amaryllis have arrived. But we're talking a little bit about open space right now with Jack Draxler, and we've got a caller.
Yes, we do. We have Charles joining us on the line from Hyde Park. Charles, welcome to the Garden Guide.
Thank you. I had a couple of questions, but I do have to comment on the planning. Our area is like a blank sheet of drawing paper for creative people.
Yeah.
And we can make this as beautiful as you can possibly imagine. It has to be done before larger government agencies come in and mandate their rules.
Yes.
Where state comes in and then federal comes in. I've lived this in other states, and I see how it goes. It's very important for us to pay attention and get the place as beautiful as we want it. Hyde Park is doing a magnificent job of planning and preparing and putting in the multiple housing that has to go in in an artistic way and in the right places.
Yeah.
So that's so important. But my main question...
Yes. Thank you for your comment, Charles. Thank you.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
My main question is, I stole your idea of your planter last year, planters with the sweet potato vines.
Yes.
Not only did the sweet potato vines be the most spectacular planter in the neighborhood, but it's flowed out on the used brick, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Awesome.
Now, the frosts are coming, and I want to know, is there any way, is that an annual, or can I cover that up, or do I have to pull it all back out?
You got to pull it out. Yeah. We just cleaned the planters on Center Street this week, and it was a monumental task because the plants were so huge. Yeah, they were just. I mean, we had to have the city bring their trucks in so we could get all the plant material gathered up because it's like the plants were so massive. But those sweet potato vines, the first frost comes in and they're toast. Yeah, and they won't winter over.
Yeah.
And the bulbs that they develop underneath, so the tubers that are there, some of them can get like as big as a volleyball. Like we've pulled these huge tubers out from underneath them. They taste horrible. Don't even think about eating them.
It's unsavable. It's not a bulb.
I believe they are edible, but they definitely are inedible when it comes to flavor.
Well, I will enjoy the last day or two of seeing this planter. I think I'll take a picture of it for the winter.
Yes.
So that I know how important it is to do it. I only bought 5 of them from you. I can't believe what a beautiful transition it makes. And of course, I'm sticking tulip bulbs all in the planter.
Oh, gorgeous.
So that'll come out, and as soon as they die, I'll have the sweet potato vines go in.
Yeah.
I planted mine a little bit early You have to go a little bit late in May, I think, on the sweet potato vines.
Yes.
I lost one or two. But
Yeah.
Thank you
You're
again for that
so
great
welcome.
idea.
Yeah, the other thing you got to be aware of with the sweet potato vines is the deer think they're absolutely delicious as well too. So we struggle at my house growing the sweet potato vines because there's no leaves left on them. The deer will just eat them to pieces, and so we enjoy the ones on Center Street because there is not a resident deer herd that lives there like like at my house. So anyway. Charles, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for calling. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
All right, we'll see you. All right, we've got a couple minutes before we take a break. 753-5868, 753-KVNU if you'd like to join our conversation and ask questions about gardening.
Yeah.
It's like we're wrapping it up. I mean, I got my garden just like I got all the tomato cages out. I got my tomatoes cleared up and composted those, and everything's like ready to roll.
Yeah. We took the last of the tomatoes off a week ago. And took the last squash out a week ago. And took care of the apples, like I said yesterday, and. Yeah, as much as we hate to see this season go, I was up in Logan Canyon. We're talking about this open space. Logan Canyon still has some beautiful color up there right now.
Yes.
And Jack, I know you grew up in North Logan. You and I were in the same neighborhood. Growing up as a kid, I grew up and worked on a lot of the farms up there. Those farms are gone.
They are.
The farms where we held the pumpkin walk and some of those great memories from 30 years ago, they're gone and they'll never come back. And yes, it's been some good growth, absolutely. But I think as we talk about this is really about smart growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because once those farms are gone, once those green spaces are gone, they won't come back. The orchard that I picked as a kid growing up I think they gave us $1 a bushel for apples, and I remember as a kid, I'm like, "Wow, I'm rolling in the dough."
That was such a great deal, wasn't it? Yeah.
But it took us a long time to pick those, and those are gone now, and so
and I think the listeners to this show are people who appreciate the stewardship of land and the productivity.
The productivity,
of land. And there's so many positive benefits from not only from our gardens, but from our canyons, from our farms, from the areas that we see that we don't want to completely disappear. And I honestly do not believe they have to disappear. Even though we are not anti-growth, we know that growth is going to happen and needs to. We want our kids to be able to live here. And we want affordable housing as well. But I'm very confident that we can do it in a smart way, like you say, with smart growth.
Right. And what I like is, and I didn't know this previously, is that this was just kind of seed money to get the ball rolling as well too. I was looking at it, it's like, God, $20 million could be just like, gone with a few really nice projects. And if this is just a portion. If it's a third or a fifth or whatever extra funding we can get federally, that would be amazing. Then we could really make a difference.
And we've seen that in places like Wasatch County and Summit County. Sometimes we don't like to compare ourselves to Summit County because it's Park City. But what we've seen there has been really interesting is they have now passed 3 bond issues for open space. The first one was basically carried by Park City. And the people on the east side of the valley, because they're more conservative, they were saying, we're not so sure. But once the public saw what was done with that first bond issue, they've had 2 subsequent ones. And the east side of the valley, Colville, Camas, and that area, has voted in favor at about the same percentage as the folks in Park City. So they've seen the results.
The value, yeah. That's nice. That's good that we have a model to kind of follow with what they've done previously. So this isn't just something you pulled out of a hat and said, "Hey, let's try it." Somebody else has been successful with it previously. Awesome. We've got another call.
We do. We have Barry joining us on the line from North Logan. Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I was just wondering, is there something special that should be done with the drip system to winterize it?
I took my drip system down this week, And if you leave it out, that's okay. Just got to make sure and blow that water out, because it can damage lines if you have just even a little pocket of water in there. And then you've got to like go back and find all the holes for next year. So we're recommending sprinklers get blown out here this next week. Drip system, I'd do the same thing as well too. And I gathered up all my soakers as well too. But they can handle the weather pretty well. The soakers do, because since they're a lot more porous. But I still make sure and open both ends and get the water drained out of those as well too.
Okay, and do you take the soakers out of the soil, or do you leave them buried?
We've got some that are permanent, that just kind of stay there and are buried. But in my vegetable garden, I roll those up and I bring those in, since they're more on the surface. And UV light breaks those down a little bit faster, and good to roll those up. But my father put some right along his driveway where he's got a lot of perennials and he's got iris and a lot of different things. And that soaker just it lasted for like probably 10 years, just buried slightly in that area. And we never ever gathered it up and just never had any problems with it. So it worked great, just leaving it out there all the time.
Okay, no, thank you.
You're so welcome. Thanks for calling this morning. All right.
You're welcome.
Okay.
We've got time to take some calls. We'll go to our bottom of the hour break here and take more calls coming up in the second half as Jack Draxler from North Logan and also Mark Anderson joined us in the studio here for the Garden Guide. It's 8:30 now on KVNU. Minutes after the hour, I'm Will Feelwright with your KVNU News Update. It's brought to you by UNI Furniture. Well, as fall temperatures are settling in now and winter seems to be on the doorstep, the Utah Division of Water Resources is recommending that most of the state shut off its irrigation systems until next spring, when irrigation season will begin again. The only exception is in southern Utah around Washington County. Candace Hassenjaeger, director of the Utah Division of Water Resources, said that conservation shouldn't end when we turn off our sprinklers, though. There are still ways to save water today so that we'll have it for tomorrow. Now, as winter months are drawing closer, residents are encouraged to look for ways to save water indoors. Saving water indoors can be done by checking for leaks, getting a rebate for water-efficient toilets, and running full loads in dishwashers and washing machines. Utahns did a great job using less water this year. The division reported water savings of over 9 billion gallons. And new research has revealed the most stressed states in the U.S., with Connecticut #1 and Utah in the top 5. The study was conducted by addiction specialists at Diamond Rehab Thailand and analyzed Google Trend data for a selection of stress-related terms to see which states were the most stressed. Now, the study found that Connecticut is the most stressed state, with the state scoring highest for searches for stress and many searches for the term of psychological stress, while Vermont came in second, followed by Massachusetts, and Utah coming in fourth place with a stress score of 84.1 for the Mountain West state. Now, it had the highest search levels for any state for depression and the second highest in the top 10 for anxiety and stress. Well, looking at colder weather, rain and snow expected for this weekend, as temperatures are only going to be around the mid-40s during the day and overnight temperatures in the low 30s. Will Feelwright for KVNU News.
From ABC Sports. Hi, everybody. I'm Todd Ant. The Phillies back home for Game 3 of the NLCS, and Kyle Schwarber rocks Citizens Bank Park in his first at-bat.
Swung on, hit in the air, right center field, pretty deep. Going back and looking up is Soto. It's gone! Lead off, home run!
And in the fourth, Gene Segura snapped a 1-1 tie.
Swung on, poked towards center. It'll be a base hit. It falls in, and both runs are going to score.
On WIP, the Phillies nailed Joe Musgrove for 4 runs, taking Game 3 4-2 and a 2-1 series lead. Houston right-hander Lance McCullers Jr. sustained a small cut to his throwing elbow after being hit with a champagne bottle during the team's celebration after the ALDS.
A little bit of swelling, not a huge deal. We thought it'd be beneficial to give me some days off.
So the Astros will start Christian Javier in Game 3 of the ALCS against the Yankees on Saturday. McCullers will start Game 4. Houston leads 2-0. And Nikola Jokic had his 77th career double, and Denver edged Golden State 128-123. This is ABC Sports.
Hi there. We're your new neighbors, the Voles. I'm horrible, and this is my wife, Terrible. Hi! It's been such a great summer, we gotta have an army of children. Now we're fixing to tear up your yard. The only warning sign of us is some surface tunneling holes, and then boom! Yard death. What do you think? Should we get started, Ma? Yep. These guys aren't gonna call the troops at Logan Extermination.
Voles are a problem. They can tear up your lawn and garden. But there is something you can do. Call Logan Extermination at 752-8450.
Remember last October's huge snowstorm that destroyed trees all over Cache Valley? Bobby and his crew at Hall Tree Care were the most popular guys in town.
Yeah, high five.
Not saying that will happen again. However, I just looked at the forecast for winter and it calls for snow. Snow can wreak havoc in your overgrown trees and shrubs, which can wreak even more havoc in your home and vehicles. Call Hall Tree Care before winter gets here. 760-6587. Ask about their radio discount. That's HULL Tree Care.
From gardening to landscaping, it's the Garden Guide on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
And we welcome you back to the show. 8:34 on this blustery, I think is what we're calling it for today. The wind, just checking the wind totals, readings throughout the valley right now. Mouth of Logan Canyon, which of course is where we usually see a lot of wind. Seeing wind gusts this morning right around 21 miles an hour. Up on top of Mount Logan, where we always record the highest wind, 67 miles an hour. So this cold front
is happening.
Yep, coming in. And this is about the warmest it's going to be for the next 4 or 5 days.
So right now.
Yep.
Well, I knew the wind was blowing hard because I heard it last night, and then I saw a branch on the ground today when I came down, darn it. So
it's coming.
Got more branches to clean up. It was a pretty good size branch. Well, we've been talking about open space so far, but we also need to talk about some other gardening things as well, too. I have some extra open space at my house to plant bulbs in, so we can definitely talk about bulbs. Great time to winterize your roses. I've had multiple calls this week about how to take care of hydrangeas for the winter, and so that's definitely something we can talk about if there's some interest there. And amaryllis bulbs came in this week. So they're like, so much fun to enjoy inside. Since the weather's changing, we can't enjoy all of our flowers and plants that have been growing outside. We can start enjoying some indoor plants. But I have had multiple calls this week about what should I do with my hydrangeas? Should I prune them now? Should I fertilize them? Should I cut them back? You know, what should I do? Well, it depends on the type of hydrangea, but most hydrangeas like to be pruned in the spring. And so you really don't want to do a whole lot of fall pruning unless they're really big and maybe a little overgrown, and you're afraid that some snow in the winter could break them or damage them. And so do minimal pruning this fall. It's really better to leave the blossoms on, the spent blossoms, and leave them on and then prune them off in the springtime. And so don't do too much pruning. A little bit of maintenance pruning right now if we need to, and then we'll prune a lot heavier in the springtime. But your large leaf, your macrophylla hydrangeas, they really don't need a whole lot of pruning. And your panicum, the big ones like the Annabelle hydrangeas, they don't need a whole lot of pruning either. So we're just going to do light pruning in the springtime. But winterization would be great to do for those to help make them a little bit hardier through the winter. And this is what we do with our roses. And so what I like to do is use 1/4 cup of magnesium sulfate and 1/4 cup of potash on all the roses. So I'll do that on each rose. I'll sprinkle that on, water it really well so it starts to break down, gets down into the soil, and then mulch them afterwards. And with the hydrangeas, you can do the same thing. They don't need as thick a mulch as the roses do since they're much hardier than the roses are. But 1/4 cup of magnesium sulfate will help them bloom more next year. It will lower the pH of the soil, and then the potash helps them get ready for winter. So the potash is the final number of the analysis, NPK. It's the K part. So the potassium, the potash is the potassium, and it will make your plants hardier through the winter time, up to about 10 degrees hardier, and prepare them for the season next year as well too. So 1/4 cup of potash, 1/4 cup of magnesium, water that in, and then mulch the roses. And with the hydrangeas, a light mulch wouldn't hurt. 2 or 3 inches of a nice mulch would be great for those, but you don't have to really cover those up like you do with the roses. With the roses, leaves or a nice compost. We like our soil building conditioner is great for mulching the roses because in the spring you can just pull it back and work it into the soil. You don't have to haul it off like you do with the leaves. Yeah, it's a lot of work with the leaves. But that would be great to do that in the next week or two with the roses because I think we're gonna get some cold weather for a week, but I think we'll have some nice weather back again before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's not completely winter yet, although it's going to feel like it for a couple of days.
And Jack's still here if you want to call in if you got questions about Proposition 1 and open space and I think it's been interesting to talk about because it directly affects our business and what Zollingers has been able to do. We would love to see some of our other big open areas do that as well too because they're partners of Anderson Seed and Garden, and if we lose all of our partners, that's hard for us to continue working. So and it looks like we got a phone call. Yeah,
we do. We have Janet joining us on the line from Franklin. Janet, welcome to the show. Your question for Mark this morning.
Hi. Well, I want to talk about two different things, but the first question I have is hardy hydrangea. Now you said were you talking about those hydrangeas?
Yes.
Or
yeah.
I mean, not hardy hydrangea, hardy hibiscus.
Oh, hibiscus.
Hardy hibiscus.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so hibiscus and hydrangeas are both gorgeous flowers. We love them. And beautiful flowers. But those hardy hibiscus, cut those down. Yeah, I mean, you can leave this.
Okay,
go ahead.
I will. I'm sorry. My problem, I want to know, because I have to put, where I'm at, I'm colder, so I have to, put straw on them.
Really mulch them. Yeah.
Yes. But in the spring, I have got several. One mounds beautifully. It's a beautiful specimen. The others send out huge, long shoots, and I'm so scared to cut them back because I feel like I'm cutting off the flowers.
Right.
And so I just don't know how to make those not so long and leggy, and then they fall down, and I can't enjoy the bloom.
They're not supportive. Yes, they're not supportive.
Yes, yes, and I just wanted to know what to do.
I would definitely treat them like we recommend with the roses. So the magnesium sulfate and the potash for those would be really helpful. Make them hardier through the winter. Water that in. Mulch them for sure. And so we're going to treat those just like we would our roses because they're kind of in the same zone. But in the spring, once they really start to go, you can pinch those tops off and force them to bush out more, and you won't affect all the flower production. I will do a little double check in, Janet, and then give me a quick call this afternoon, and I'll have some better information for you. I'm going to look. I've got a couple sources that are hibiscus experts, and they will be able to tell me at what point you should do that. But because I know there's a specific time, and I'm not sure exactly when that is, but. Let's make them bushier instead of tall and leggy and fall over.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would like. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And then my other comment was, I grew up in Southern California, so that is why I call you so much. Because, it's such a different growing experience. The valley that I lived in had 100,000 people. It was a bedroom community. It had been all orange groves. At one point, the entire thing was orange groves. And because it was Southern California and going through the same process of no open space, the property values were just so high that there was not a single orange tree, unless it was growing in your yard, there was not one left. And I mean, we're talking, it was a huge area. And it was so sad to see. And people were so sad that they hadn't thought about that and at least preserved areas, saved some of it,
Right.
And that's why this open space is so important because, you understand that people need the money, but I'm so tired of farmers retiring and their kids selling everything off to get as much money as they can.
Yeah.
And it's just like we need to preserve Cache Valley so that it's the gem that it is.
Yeah. And this is the issue that we're having in our industry is like there's all these wonderful garden centers around that are independents. They're owned by local people. And when they built their business 50, 60, 80 years ago, like we did, they were on the outskirts of town. They were out in the boonies, is what my dad would have said. It's like they built out in the boonies, and they had acres, and it was just for growing and greenhouse production, and they got a garden center, they've got trees and all those things, and those are all disappearing because the property is worth so much money now that the next generation cannot afford to take over. And so they just close the business up. It's profitable. They make money. They support their families with it. They just close up and just disappear because the property is worth so much. And this is what was going to happen to Zollinger's, and I'm afraid it's going to happen to some of our other partners that we work with. And so, I normally don't bring political stuff on the show, but it's like this directly affects Anderson's and what we do. And so I wanted people to know that it's like this is really important because our business could see the same thing happen in the next 10 or 15 years. I know we're downtown. I mean, we're in a prime location, but our partners are not. And so, if they end up selling all their property off, it's like, okay, where do I get my trees from? Okay, where do I get my bedding plants from? Because they're all gone. And
yes,
so
and that's my point is I've seen it happen. And it's so sad. But it's just that everybody after the fact goes, gosh, wish we'd thought about that. I wish we would have done something about that so that wouldn't have happened.
Yep. And so
this is our opportunity to do something about it right now.
Exactly. And it's really a minimal investment on our part. And if we can get partnerships with the independent and with the federal government, we can make a difference and really preserve some of these great places in our valley. So
exactly.
Janet, thanks so much for calling.
Okay. No problem. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Thanks so much. Well, we've got about 15 minutes left in the show. Jack's still here. Jack, great to have you on the show.
Well, thank you.
Nice to have your expertise and your information to share. And we'll take more calls if you want to call in with questions or comments. 753-5868, 753-KVNU. We've talked about winterization of roses. We've talked about hydrangeas. Winterizing the lawn, great time to do that. It's probably going to be a little bit cold for weed control now.
And probably may want to do just a little bit of pruning, as we were mentioning. But a lot of that pruning is best to do springtime. Especially for fruit trees and things like that.
We can do some fruit tree pruning in the fall, and we my crews go out and do a lot of pruning in the fall, but there are some shade trees that we really should prune in the fall. So maples and birches definitely perform better if you prune them in the fall. You can prune them in the spring, but they bleed like crazy. Since the sap's starting to flow in the springtime. That's when you tap your maples for your sugar maples for syrup. And it just flows like crazy. So if you prune, you'll have your trees bleeding like crazy all over the place too, and they lose a lot of strength that way. And so maples should be pruned in the fall. Birch should be pruned in the fall, and most of the other trees we can do in the spring. But we do some fruit tree pruning from now until really when the trees freeze up in December. We're okay to do that and get them prepared for next year as well too. So don't hesitate to do a little bit of pruning right now if you need to, and then we like to follow up in the spring with a little bit more as necessary if we get a little bit of winter damage. So, but bulbs. Great time to get out there planting bulbs. Usually this week is like my perfect bulb planting time. And if you got deer, you got to plan ahead and not be quite aggressive with the tulips and go really heavy on the daffodils.
Yeah,
since they won't eat the daffodils. Yeah, and. I had a couple people in yesterday, and they had never planted bulbs before. And I patted them on the back, and I said, this is a great way to start because bulbs are so easy. You really can't mess them up. What we're going to do is we're going to dig a hole. You're going to put your bulbs in there, a little fertilizer down on the bottom before you put the bulbs in. We're going to cover them up, and you're going to water them, and then you're going to stand back and let Mother Nature take care of the rest of it. It's so simple and easy to do, and then they're so productive in the spring. And so I had another couple there, and they were trying to figure out which bulbs to plant. And I was like, okay, well, these tulips up here, they bloom early, so that's about the first part of April. And these here, they bloom mid-April to the latter part of April. And these ones down here on the bottom, they're later and they're bigger, and they bloom like first part of May. And so if you plan it right and you try some of each of these, you could have them blooming for 4 to 6 weeks easily. And so you can have blossom tulip flowers and hyacinths and daffodils out there for probably 6 weeks in the spring and have a lot of color when there's nothing really else you can plant
just
out there.
Continuous change of color.
Yeah. And it's really nice to do. And bulbs can get really expensive, and so you don't want to like cover your entire yard with them unless you are independently wealthy, which would be great. But you can focus them in smaller areas, and so everybody's eye is drawn to that color, especially in the spring when there's not a lot of color out there. You've got the grass is starting to green up, and leaves haven't really come out on the trees yet. And so if you concentrate your bulbs in a couple strategic locations, like in front of your house or by your driveway or right by the sidewalk, where your focal points are on your house, everyone will notice that, and they won't see all the rest of the yard is bare and doesn't have anything there. They'll just drive by and they'll go, Will, your house is so cute.
Beautiful.
You've just got all these amazing flowers in front there. And you go, thank you so much. And we worked really hard when we were planting all those bulbs last year. But you've only got, a 10 by 10 square spot that you put all the bulbs in, and the rest there's like nothing.
For us, it's a small strip between an RV pad and our driveway. And you just put them right there, and it works perfect.
Yeah, so it's
water, and that's all.
It's amazing how your eye is drawn to that color,
Mm-hmm.
And so if you concentrate a lot of color in strategic locations in your house, in front of your house, or wherever it is, that's where people's eye will go, and they'll look at that and they'll go, "Oh, your yard looks so great this spring," and you're like, that's the way we want it, and easy to do, low maintenance. They just kind of do their own thing, and you just don't have to worry about it. So.
And the amaryllis bulbs, I have to say, I'd never played around with amaryllis bulbs until last year. I thought, I'm going to try this. And it was such a fun, it became almost like a holiday tradition for us because it actually blossomed right around Christmas. I think it was maybe 2 or 3 days just before Christmas. And it was gorgeous. The way the thing, it just sprout up, took off. And, of course, for us, first time, we didn't really know what it was going to do, what it was going to look like. And just some gorgeous blossoms.
If you time it just right, you can kind of play with the temperature a little bit and have them bloom right around the holidays. But I like to keep mine longer and have them bloom after the holidays are over, because then you need something to kind of keep you perked up and happy for the rest of the winter.
Right.
Have you done amaryllis before, Jack? Are you like?
My wife has, and they're gorgeous.
So pretty.
And they bloom at a different time than so many other things, which makes them especially appealing.
We keep ours in a cooler part of the store, and it seems like the ones that we keep at about 60 degrees, and we just kind of let them wait, they bloom better than the ones that we plant up really early. They just get that extra storage time, and the flowers are just massive. Sometimes they're like 10 inches across, and you get 12, 16, 20 flowers per bulb, depending on which size bulb you get. So we've got some jumbos in, and those will usually produce 3 or 4 flower stems with 4 to 6 flowers on each stem. And then we've got our standard size bulbs, which are still huge. They're like the biggest ones we can get. And I think I've got 22 varieties coming this year. We've got about half of our bulbs right now. We got the other half coming this week. And those will produce 2 to 3 flower stems with 4 to 6 flowers on each stem. So usually between 12 and 18 flowers is pretty common on our standard bulbs. So, but those jumbos will have 18 to 20 to 22 flowers sometimes on those really big ones.
Pretty.
Yeah, and they're just massive. So amaryllis bulbs are in. Regular bulbs, we're getting picked over. It's like, if you want to get bulbs planted, come get them right away, because we need to get those going. And we've got a little less than 10 minutes left. Phone lines are open, 753-5868, 753-KVNU, or 1-800-369-5868. And we can talk garden.
Mm-hmm.
We can talk lawns. We can talk winterization. Get those sprinklers blown out. It's time to get things going.
One of the questions that I've heard being asked, just as we've been doing several talk shows and news stories about the Proposition 1, is there a particular area of focus? I mean, ideally, we'd love to say, we'd love to save everything, like we said.
Yeah.
And that's just not a reality. But is there several areas? Mark and I have talked about in the past, driving into Logan, for example. You're coming out of Sardine Canyon into Logan, and that's a key corridor. If you can preserve areas there, or along Valley View Highway, is that kind of where this is starting? Is looking at some key areas, Jack, to start off with?
Absolutely. However, we don't have any specifics in mind yet. Some people think that we have specific areas that we're already focusing on and zeroing on. We don't. We want to leave it up to this Open Lands Board that recommends to the County Council to evaluate projects on objective criteria and try to determine where the key points are that we can try to preserve. And again, it's valley-wide. It's not just at the entrances, but the entrances to the valley are important to people, we've learned, because this is the impression you get when, as you mentioned, Mark, when we come home.
Yeah. And this is going to be an application process. So it'll be, someone comes up with a project and says, hey, this would be great to preserve this, and then they bring it to the board, and then they decide if it's going to fit the criteria of what they're looking for.
Exactly.
All right.
With the council getting the final say.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Got a couple callers?
Got a couple, yes. Let's go out to Joy first in North Logan. Joy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Mark, a couple weeks ago you talked about winterizing the pit fruit trees by spraying them with stuff.
Yes.
I was going to a football game like I am right now and didn't get to write that down.
Okay.
Can you reiterate what that is? You said 25% of the leaves.
Yep.
And my leaves haven't dropped yet.
Yep. So we're to that point where I think if you wait until after this big storm system comes through, it's going to be a little bit chilly, but watch those low temperatures, because we don't want to spray when we've got freezing temperatures that are like really, really cold. So a dormant oil, so either a horticultural oil or a dormant oil mixed in with a fungicide. So we would use like copper soap, or we could use Daconil, or we could use F-stop. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ones that you can use, and it's going to control all the diseases that affect the stone fruits. So we've got shot hole fungus and bacterial bud blight and peach leaf curl. A lot of those diseases winter over from one year to the next, and so if you can spray at about 20 to 50% leaf drop, that's like prime time to prevent that disease from spreading over until next year. And just one application is all you need. So kind of watch the temperatures, make sure it has enough time to dry, and try and spray when the daytime temperatures are good and it's not going to get too cold while it's wet.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. What about if we have beehives?
Will not affect the bees, especially if they're home and it's a little bit cooler. So these are very low toxicity for your beneficial insects. The disease control won't bother them at all. The oil, you'd have to spray it right on the bee for it to affect them. So it should be great, Joy.
So neem oil will work?
I wouldn't use the neem oil. I would use either a horticultural oil, which is a mineral oil, or a dormant oil, which is usually a paraffinic oil. So they're made for horticultural uses. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Mark.
You're so welcome. Thanks for calling this morning, and good luck at your game.
Thanks.
And we have one more caller, Kim, joining us on the line from River Heights. Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark.
Hey.
I bought a little miniature maple from you guys in the spring. I planted it, and I'm wondering, do I need to cover that this winter where it's still really fresh, and just kind of cover it with plastic so it doesn't get the heavy frost and snow?
And what kind of maple? Is it a Japanese maple?
Yes, a miniature.
Okay. Where do you live?
In River Heights.
In River Heights. River Heights is actually really pretty protected. I think you would be all right. I planted my new weeping, cascading, gorgeous red Japanese maple on Thursday, since I had one that kind of bit the dust this winter, which I'd had for probably 10 years, and who knows what happened to it, but did not like this last winter, and so I have replaced it. Where you're at, I don't think you need to cover it. I think you'll be great. I would just mulch the root system and kind of protect it. And if it's in a little bit protected location, which River Heights is great for that, I think you'll be in great shape.
Okay, one other question. We had, I don't know if it was grasshoppers that nipped on our ferns and our hostas plants.
Yeah.
How do we ensure they come back next year with the leaves and the ferns that are not all eaten?
This time of year, I just take all my perennial, like flowers and like hostas and ferns, and you can just like cut those right down to the ground. They'll put all brand new. They'll put all brand new growth out next year. So the deer come and mow my hostas down for me, so I don't have to worry about that. They just all come right back again. So fall's the best time to clean up all those perennials and plants and get those cleaned up. Otherwise, you have a mess to clean up in the springtime. So I'd recommend you do it in the next couple weeks before we really get snow that sticks around. And they'll just be right back again next year, ready to go.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling this morning, Kim. You have a wonderful weekend.
All right, you too.
All right,
Bye.
thank you. All right, Jack, thank you so much for being on the show. It was enlightening. I learned some new things that I did not know about the proposition, so thank you.
Thank you, and that's what we hope for, is to just help people understand better exactly what Proposition 1 does and how it does it and why it's important, and just appreciate the chance to visit with you.
Thank you so much. And good luck with your garden next year, too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Will, thank you, too.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
We've got just 2 shows left after this.
I know.
We're hitting the end of the season.
Down to the end of the season. So we've got a lot of things to talk about still, though. I did plant trees this week. I did get my garden ready. I'm going to try and get it tilled in the next 2 weeks so we can talk about prepping the garden and getting things ready to go. But it is a really good time to plant. So planting trees, planting shrubs, excellent time. Bulbs. There's still a lot of things we can get done outside, and we'll be back again next week with another edition of the Garden Guide.
When it's happening in Washington, when it's happening on Wall Street.
That's the reason why we're going to continue, because I believe there is a cause here.
News Talk KVNU.